science,
engineering,
medicine,
chemistry,
physics,
humanities, cardiology,
computing, public health, global health,
aeronautics, science communication.
Hello everyone, I'm Gareth Mitchell, and in this edition, happy nearly Christmas. So on our own festive menu, we're looking at the economics of shopping and where the tech is taking us and our money. And let's indulge. Who's for chocolate? Well, one of our mathematicians certainly is. He's an expert in the fluid dynamics of chocolate fountains.
This here is a very large chocolate fountain, and we're seeing these beautiful curtains of chocolate falling down. And as they fall, what's really interesting about these curtains is that you might be picturing this chocolate just falling straight down, but actually it falls slightly inwards as it goes. And part of my research was trying to figure out exactly why it falls inwards and whether we could predict how much it would fall inwards.
And also in this edition, we bring you the latest landmark in the 100,000 Genomes project.
The Imperial College Podcast.
First up, though, it's news time, and Hayley Dunning, you're going to start by talking about volcanoes and something that challenges what we might have believed was going on in the belly of the beast, as it were, in the heart of these volcanoes. So what's going on here?
Yeah, so you might remember from your geography textbook days that underlying volcanoes that are going to erupt are these big magma chambers of sort of liquid rock. But for a while now, we've thought that might not be true, mostly because we've never been able to find one. And so what researchers have done instead, using modelling and the chemistry that we know from volcanoes, have found out that it's more like a mush reservoir than a molten magma chamber.
What might this mush be then, this so-called mush?
So instead of being very liquid rock under there, it's more solid rock. There are more crystals. Instead, there are just little pools of liquid in between the crystals. And as these little pools of liquid rock rise, they melt some of the crystals and they create local areas where there is more melt. And it's those that eventually erupt. But the whole magma chamber itself is mostly more mush than liquid.
Why is this significant?
Well, it might help geologists figure out more how eruptions happen, and that might help them predict them more. And also, these magma chambers are traditionally thought to be associated with some kind of ores, like metals are formed in them. And if they actually form in a different way than we thought, then that could help us find more minerals.
You have a personal relationship to this story, don't you?
I do, strangely enough. So I started my life as a volcanologist, and one of the co-authors is a professor at the University of Bristol, where I did my first master's degree, and he was my master's thesis supervisor. So it's quite nice when things come full circle.
All right, Hayley, thank you very much indeed for that. So Caroline Brogan is in the studio as well. Now, Caroline, it's been pretty exciting. Mars Insight, it's now on Mars, this incredible space probe with its different sensors and instruments on there. There's big Imperial involvement. So, in fact, let's start with that. What about the Imperial involvement here?
So Tom Pike has developed with Oxford University a seismometer. So a seismometer is an instrument that measures vibrations in the ground. So the seismometer has been put on Mars as part of Mars Insight and will be instrumental, if you'll pardon the pun, in capturing the Mars quakes that they're looking for. So the seismometer has picked up vibrations from the wind on Mars. So we now have a sound recording, the first ever, of what wind sounds like on Mars.
Let's hear some of it. Just extraordinary to hear, that wind on Mars. Just take a moment to think about that. This wind sound from our neighbouring planet. It's remarkable, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's absolutely remarkable. So they reckon the wind was blowing around 10 to 15 miles per hour from northeast to southeast. So they can even tell, the direction. And the direction it goes in is consistent with the direction of the dust devils that have been observed from orbit.
Now, for me, Caroline, that sound does speak for itself. I think job done. Mission succeeded as far as I'm concerned, but then I'm the amateur in the room here. But for the scientist part, what are they saying? What is the significance of getting these sounds, these signals back from the surface of the red planet?
Well, the lander only sort of arrived on Mars on the 26th of November, so they're not expecting to hear or detect any Mars quakes just yet. But the picking up of the sound means that the seismometer developed by Imperial College London is working. Tom Pike said The solar panels on the lander's sides respond to pressure fluctuations of the wind. It's like InSight is cupping its ears and hearing the Mars wind beating on it, which I think is really interesting. It's just a sign of more really cool things to come out of Mars from InSight.
Well, Caroline, what a story. Thank you very much for bringing us that. That is Caroline Brogan. We also heard there from Hayley Dunning. And in fact, Hayley, whilst we still have you, I wonder if we can talk about something especially seasonal, because you've been looking into Christmas shopping and the economics and the marketing aspects thereof, haven't you?
Yes, like everyone else, my wallet is straining a little under the impact of Christmas and buying all those gifts. So I actually went to speak to a business school academic, Rajesh Bhargave, about how these sorts of shopping patterns are influenced at this time of year. And to start off, I wondered what he thought about the shopping day phenomenon. So we have Black Friday, we have Cyber Monday, and even Singles Day in China. And even though these days are nothing to do with the UK, we don't have Thanksgiving, we still have Black Friday. How did that come about?
This is very interesting. I myself am from the US, so I'm used to Black Friday as the day after Thanksgiving. It is a day for shopping, and it's when the Christmas season begins for shopping. Part of the reason it's been adopted here, of course, is the growth of the e-commerce companies. And this notion that if we're going to have sales discounts in the United States for Black Friday, then we're going to extend that to our other locations as well. It's taken off here. It won't be as rabid as it is in the United States, where you see massive crowds in front of shops. But it is growing to a certain extent here, and less so in other countries, though.
The internet's obviously had a huge rise in people buying stuff online, but are people still going to high street shops?
Yeah, the high street shops are still very popular. In fact, most shopping still takes place in physical retail stores, even among younger consumers that you might think are highly tech savvy and that they would have moved towards e-commerce adoption fully.
In the world I live in media, obviously newspapers are dying and they're looking for different ways to try and stay alive. So how are shops innovating to stay alive in the face of possible internet competition?
Well, the retail shops are doing a really good job of trying to not be too protective about the retail environment, but also to think more broadly. What we're seeing now is a move towards more omni-channel strategies, which is to say, we'll have an app, we will encourage consumers to look at our offerings online. We'll also encourage them to come into the store. And if customers are in the store using our app, that actually can help promote items and help spur more sales.
Thinking about online shopping, places like Amazon's tend to dominate, and one of the things they dominate with is recommendations. And so do you see that changing with sort of machine learning, artificial intelligence? Will we do more shopping online because we will get that impulse buy because then we'll see something else that we might want?
The algorithms are getting smarter and more effective in how they're presented. Recently, I've been doing quite a bit of research on voice tech in particular as a new domain of shopping as well. So we're talking about Amazon's device. If you're listening to this in front of your Amazon device, I won't say the name because it'll trigger it, or Google's device. These devices people are using for voice tech also to shop, and they're getting recommendations that way. But even thinking about just the landing page for Amazon and what suggestions come up, these are becoming smarter and based on a lot of data of what customers will actually be interested in. It's not about persuading people to buy things that they don't want, but getting them to recognize products that they might be interested in. Some of these new technologies that are being used for recommendations in shops, right now they come across as a bit intrusive. So you walk into a store and based on your smartphone or even in the future facial recognition, a shop might know who you are and what you might be interested in purchasing. We're not there yet, but there's movement towards you walk into a store and again, this idea of omni-channel. You have an app for that store and promotions that are relevant to you pop up.
That sounds quite amazing. There are obviously lots of shopping things in the future, and this more personalised thing seems to be where it's heading. What implications do you think that has of data privacy?
Data privacy is going to be one of the big issues that will determine the success of various kinds of new technologies. So take the voice tech example. Right now there's still quite a bit of resistance to giving out information via voice or having a voice tech device at home that relates to this feeling that people have that maybe these companies are listening to us all the time. There's already a number of stories out there where people believe that their smartphones are listening in on them, so that when they have voice conversations about a product, relevant ads pop up on their social media feed, for instance. Some of these haven't been verified, of course. But I think there's quite a bit of growing concern. There's going to be many customers who are resistant to these technologies for these reasons. But if you look at the trends overall, people are just giving away their privacy. People are willing to give their data without anything in return, and that seems to be the culture we're in right now.
So we're talking here today on the 27th of November. How is your Christmas shopping going? Have you got most of it, or are you more of a last-minute shopper?
I am more of a last-minute shopper on many things, including for gifts. I think for me, because I study consumer psychology all the time, shopping stresses me out, actually, because I'm constantly thinking about these factors that are influencing my own shopping habits. So it's nice to leave it all at the end, and then I don't ruminate on it too much.
Well, fear not, shopping stresses me out too. Although, that said, I did risk a big department store earlier on, just days before Christmas, and do you know what? It was kind of okay. And in fact, they were even giving out free chocolate as we were queuing at the till, which I thought was a very nice touch. And I thought another sign that retailers really want to make your visit an event in itself, a bit more than just shopping online. That's Rajesh Bhargave, and he was talking there to Hayley Dunning. Well, it might be the crazy run-up to Christmas, but would you believe it? Some people, quite a few people actually, managed to tear themselves away from shopping to indulge in mathematics fun the other evening. At the Xmaths Late event, yes, see what they did there? There were mind-bending puzzles and the chance for visitors to make their own maths-inspired tree decorations. There was even some fluid dynamics on show. Yes, fluid dynamics received the fun treatment.
I suppose that is a bit like unboiling an egg, yeah.
It's a child's angle.
Yeah. No, that's, I don't know anything about them.
Yes, this was the fluid dynamics of chocolate fountains with Adam Townsend, who's a postdoc here in the maths department. And as you can hear, he had some pretty excited visitors with him. Also there was our reporter, Bernadetta Dadanaiti, and she asked Adam to describe the setup.
Yes, so this here is a very large chocolate fountain. So this is one of the best ones I've seen. It's almost a metre tall. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4 massive layers, and the chocolate is going up to the top. It's some great Belgian chocolates, flowing beautifully. The smell is fantastic. Everyone is coming over because they're drawn by the amazing smell, and we're seeing these beautiful curtains of chocolate falling down. And as they fall, what's really interesting about these curtains is that you might be picturing this chocolate just falling straight down, but actually it falls slightly inwards as it goes. And if you can picture a chocolate fountain, you'll find that they always go slightly inwards. And part of my research was trying to figure out exactly why it falls inwards and whether we could predict how much it would fall inwards by.
So what does chocolate has to do with maths?
So if you want to know how any liquid moves, then you have to be able to tell me or tell anyone about its viscosity, its thickness. This makes sense, right? Something like honey has a very high thickness, but high viscosity, and therefore flows quite slowly, whereas something like water, very low viscosity, flows very quickly. Now, chocolate is special, a bit like mayonnaise and ketchup, because the viscosity of chocolate changes as you play with it, as you shear it, as you stir it. So ketchup, for example, is famously difficult to get out of a bottle. Right?
Yeah, I tried it many times.
Yes, and yet they still put ketchup in glass bottles in the pub. Why? I just don't know. So what you end up smacking the back of it, or you shake the ketchup, right? And by shaking it, you're stirring it, you're shearing it, and by increasing the shear rate, the viscosity decreases. So the viscosity is going down because you're shearing it, because you're stirring it. And the same happens with chocolate. So as this chocolate is being pumped through, it gets sheared as it gets driven to the top, and then as it falls down, it's constantly being sheared because of friction on the domes and as it free falls. And so the viscosity is actually constantly changing. But you can describe the viscosity mathematically as a function of the shear rate. So that's how quickly you're shearing it.
So if we would have an equivalent water fountain,
Yes.
we would not expect it to fall in the same pattern as the chocolate does?
So this is a great question. So the water definitely wouldn't be able to be pumped up in the same way. So the chocolate fountain has a big screw in the middle which takes the chocolate up to the top. That only works if the chocolate is viscous. If it's water, it's not going to work. The water would just drop out the bottom. The water would have to be travelling a lot quicker to get the same effect. But you could probably get the same sort of effect. And if you have the effect where the chocolate falls inwards, again, if you picture what the chocolate fountain looks like, where the chocolate fountain is falling inwards, this is the same effect that you see indeed with water sometimes in garden features. But as an experiment for people listening, if you take a pen and then take a coin and blue tack the coin flat to the top of the pen, if that makes sense. So the coin is flat on the pen lid, so you've got like a T shape with a very small thing at the top. If you take the pen with the coin flat at the top and then put it under a running tap, so the water hits the coin, the water goes outwards, as you would expect, and then it comes back round, it comes all the way back round to almost about the bottom of the pen, I would say. And it comes around in a nice shape. It's called a water bell. It's a beautiful shape. And that's surface tension acting, and it's the same sort of force that is happening here with the chocolate fountain, making that shape.
What are the broader applications of this type of research?
Right, so chocolate is very important.
I agree.
But the same sort of equations also apply to lava, so if you want to know how lava flows, obviously quite important. Also true of paint, also true of blood. And it's really important that blood behaves this way, because when blood is inside of us, it's constantly being pumped, right? Constantly being sheared by our arteries, pumped around by our hearts. When blood's inside of us, it needs to be nice and thin. Great, so if it's being sheared, that's good, it's nice and thin. But at the same time, if we fall over, right, then and you cut your knee or something, you don't want your blood to be thin and pouring all out of you, right? This would be a mess, a disaster. It's not good. Instead, you need your blood to coagulate or to clot. So when it's not being sheared, you need your viscosity to be higher, right? So we can describe blood's viscosity in the same way, so which is really the power of mathematics, isn't it? It's like you've got this one equation and it just does everything. It's just astonishing. And, GCSE kids can play with it, but you can also apply it to blood and many industrial applications.
So was it chocolate, or was it the benefit for the medicine that inspired you to do this research?
Oh, I mean, it's all about the chocolate, quite clearly.
Thank you.
You are.
Well, it obviously is. That's mathematician Adam Townsend talking there to Bernadetta Dadanaiti at that Xmaths Late event. And whilst we're on a roll, let me give you another date for your diary. The next Lates is on the 21st of February, and it's all about smart fashion. So for details and to sign up for free, yes, for free, then go to imperial.ac.uk/festival and then click on Imperial Lates. It's really easy. Well, finally, the latest step forward in personalised medicine. An event at Hammersmith Hospital, part of Imperial College Healthcare NHS Trust, has recently been the setting for a landmark event in genomic medicine. You may well have heard about it on the news. It's the latest in the 100,000 Genomes project. Here's our reporter, Maxine Myers.
Experts in a partnership led by Imperial College Healthcare NHS Trust have enrolled more than 3,000 people for genome sequencing as part of the 100,000 Genomes project. This is a national initiative led by Genomics England that has now sequenced 100,000 genomes from around 85,000 participants to enable new scientific discoveries and medical insights, as well as bring benefits to patients. A recent event took place at Hammersmith Hospital to celebrate this milestone. I caught up with Professor Claire Shovlin, Professor of Practice in Clinical and Molecular Medicine and Consultant Respiratory Physician at Imperial College Healthcare NHS Trust, to find out more about her rare diseases work as part of the project.
First, I set up and chaired the West London Genomic Medicine Centre Rare Disease MDT. Running from January 2016, this brought together more than 60 rare disease professionals across 5 trusts every couple of weeks so that we could help deliver the project. I also led for rare diseases at Imperial. I recruited patients from the clinics that I run, and I also set up 2 of the major modules in Imperial's MSc for Genomic Medicine, particularly focusing on core concepts, and a new module called Genomics and the Patient, which really focused on letting professionals know what genomics meant to a patient.
So what type of rare diseases did you look at in terms of the project?
The 2 diseases that I most commonly recruited patients and families for had inherited diseases of the blood vessels. One of these is called HHT, another affects the blood vessels in the lungs and called PABMs, and many people have both. So by recruiting patients and their families to the 100,000 Genomes project, we've been able to provide many families already with a genetic diagnosis that allows them to tell who in the family has the condition or doesn't have the condition. And as it runs from parent to child, affecting on average half the children, this means that a large number of these families can now offer the test to people who maybe don't look like they have the condition, rule it out, and then that spares them and their descendants all the unnecessary tests that would have otherwise been offered. Then for the people who do have the condition, knowing the exact type of change that they have can change their current management. We already treat certain subgroups in a slightly different way, and that will only increase in the future. So it's really personalising the medical care that patients and their families receive. And what's been very exciting for these patients is that they've already been able to see what lies ahead. For instance, there are research programs that we are running to look at people with a particular type of DNA change. So irrespective of what gene is affected, sometimes, about 1 in 6 of the patients I see in fact, the DNA changes so that it has a message that has an early stop in it, which doesn't make a protein. But there are treatments available that will allow the cell that reads these messages to read through those stops and make a protein and potentially correct the condition. And with my US collaborator, we are recruiting people to grow their endothelial cells in the laboratory. These are the cells that line blood vessels, and then test if we can normalise the function of the cells using these drugs. And several people in the 100,000 Genomes project have already been recruited to this. And the next stage will, of course, be to then take this forward for new treatments for that group. And there will be other opportunities in the future.
I mean, it seems like the project has achieved quite a bit, and there's been results already and patients are starting to see the impact. For you, what were the main lessons that you learnt from the project?
Well, I think the first thing was it was possible to achieve the impossible. We were all told at the beginning this just won't work. It won't work. And it has. We are already delivering results to patients in our clinics. I think the second was how useful it was to really embrace new working practices. Medicine tends to operate in silos, be it within specialties, within medical disciplines, within particular hospitals or trusts. All of that had to go, so we worked across the 5 trusts, across different specialties, and while this was initially quite challenging, it's been incredibly efficient, really fun, and rewarding as we're now delivering what we never thought we would be able to. I wasn't particularly based in the laboratories, but I know my laboratory colleagues had to really develop new methods on how to prepare and process samples, all very challenging, all the computational work that was needed, but it was all achieved and we delivered.
What do you think the next steps are? What lies ahead?
So for the families that have already been recruited, they have so far received or are receiving the results of the genetic changes that may cause their specific conditions. But the data allow many, many more things to be evaluated in research settings. So in the future, we anticipate that genomic medicine will really be able to direct people towards safer treatments, prevent them having unnecessary treatments that we can tell are not going to work. Medicine has always in the past based its recommendations on looking at tens of thousands of people with a particular condition and knowing that a certain percentage will respond in a particular way. Genomics now gives us the chance to really identify which those people are who are going to respond or not respond and personalise the medicine that's available to people. And it's really incredibly exciting that this has been achieved within the NHS. I don't think there's any other country that's quite so advanced with the resources that have been put in through the NHS to really take this forward in the future. And I know my international colleagues, for instance, who are helping with the research sides to the 100,000 genomes, they are very envious of what we've already been able to achieve for patients and their families.
That report from Maxine Myers, and of course you can hear more about that and other news from around the college via our news website. It's imperial.ac.uk/news. And don't forget that late event is on the 21st of February. Do sign yourself up for that. But for now, it just remains for me, Gareth Mitchell, and all of us here on the podcast team to say a very happy Christmas, and we'll see you in the new year. Happy Christmas, everyone, and goodbye.